Hail and welcome to the event coverage for Hull, City of the Damned. So Hull, City of the Damned was a Mordheim event run, I think it's been once a year up to now, but due to the success of this event, Ken, the organiser, is deciding to run it again later in the year. So I'm going to go through and talk about the overall day, how it was ran, or the overall 2 days, how the terrain was, because that's a specific thing of note that was brilliant at this event. And then I'm going to go over a quick rundown of how my 10 games went across the 2 days and what warband I took. First thing to say is it was a brilliant event run by Ken. It was a 2-day event in the city centre of Hull, which meant we could get 5 games in each day. The games actually weren't as rushed as I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be a real rush to get through all of the games, but it wasn't. It was a very relaxed day. I managed to get 9 out of the 10 games filmed, which, or at least from a top-down perspective, which I realised after the first game had gone so fast because we know Mordheim can be very fast and brutal, but also like the nature of the game plus how well it was ran meant that we managed to get those 5 games in and in fairly good time. The day started out with our generic warbands being 1,000 gold crowns each. Wrong, 500 gold crowns each. I did not take 1,000 gold crowns. I'm thinking of Necromunda. So yeah, there was, I believe, 30 players. It was a good size. You managed to speak to everyone, plus having 10 games meant that you got round a sizable portion of the players as we went round anyway. And nothing but good things to say about the actual overall running of the event. It was really good and I will definitely be going again. And I recommend to anyone that they should also go again. Like, the armies were fantastic. The boards, which we'll come on to in a second, was fantastic. The people were great as well. So into the boards. Now this is a specific section within this event coverage because I've got to say it's the best terrain that I have ever used going to an event. Like, just hands down, it has smashed every event I've ever seen out of the water in terms of terrain. They had 6 set piece boards, which were just absolutely fantastic. And we will go over 2 of them that I will describe, and you can see pictures of all of them as we go around. So the primary one, there was 2 that had not smoke machines, but like water vapor machines that made mist, that covered the table in mist. It was really cool. One set piece board that just fitted the atmosphere of Mordheim perfectly. I actually played Thomas Whiddon on that board and made sure to film that from a normal perspective. So if you can watch that, or if you've got time to watch that, you will see how good that board was, and it fitted Mordheim's atmosphere excellently. Then next up, there was the absolutely amazing Carnival of Chaos board, which had intricate little details all across the board. It had sort of freak shows across the board with a set of giant legs that when you lifted up a tent, actually it was a Nurgling on 2 stilts with giant legs on the bottom. And there was just touches all across the board, like a Ferris wheel, a mystic woman, like a crystal ball woman's, a fortune teller's thing. A fortune teller's tent with a crystal ball. Then there was various stands about, a merry-go-round, and also a main circus tent. Or there was a dunk. Like, honestly, this board cannot be gone on about enough. It's potentially the best board that I've ever seen. So, yeah, section 2 of the event coverage, the boards, amazing. Can't say enough about them. But I will move on just in the interest of time. So there were 2 things to say about the event. They had their own rules pack, which added some nice touches, I felt, to the event, such as offhand weapons getting -1 to hit. I thought their addition of a cap on the amount of ranged weapons that you could have for 33% was really good. Shields giving +1 armor saving combat, like 6th edition fantasy, really good. And I think they balanced the game in that having 2 hand weapons isn't always the best way to go, like it is in base Mordheim. I also think the ranged weapon limit means that it feels less like Necromunda in fantasy setting and more like a fantasy setting skirmish game. I feel without that limit, certain warbands tend to just go all ranged. And it brings Shadow Warriors at least closer to balanced than they previously were. Even if they don't fully get there, it brings them closer to it. So it's not a bad change. It's a really good change. So moving on to what I had as an experience at the event with my warband. So I started out with a Norse Explorers warband that was led by Khan Beiji, who you might be able to see in the middle here because he's such a baller. So my Norse explorers were actually Kurgan explorers. So I started out with Beiji, who is my Khan, who had weapon skill 4 to start, strength 4, and he had a sword, a shield, and I just had some spare gold crowns, so he actually got a helmet, which I almost never do. I then had Bojack, the werehorse in this scenario, but he's my cursed marauder who the gods are fighting a war over his body, so mutating him uncontrollably. So yeah, werehorse in this one, Bojack Norseman. 2 berserkers, which are the frenzied strength 4 Norse characters. They had swords and daggers each because they can't take any armor. I then had 2 bondsmen, which are Juve level characters, so they were my drummers, with hammer and shield, the drum just counting as a shield. I then had 2 hunters with bows and 5 wolves, just to cap out my numbers. And the wolves are special in the Norse Explorers list because they got movement 9, even though they've only got weapon skill and strength 3. Unlike, say, Witch Hunter's dogs, which are weapon skill 4, strength 4 at movement 6, which is potentially better, but just different. All my games were great. I will run them all down just to give a synopsis of what happened. I first played against Gabriel with his undead. We played the Weird Stone Hunt scenario, as in the event everyone on every table was playing the same mission every time. I'd potentially allow everyone to play different missions by rolling next time, like if I was Ken, but that's just a personal taste thing. It makes it much smoother for the event to do it that way. I understand that one. We ended up with 2 Weirdstone each. I'd sent my Berserker and 2 Wolves on a flanking manoeuvre, much overestimating their ability to do anything, and got banged by Gabriel's vampire and a horde of ghouls and zombies. On my second turn, I failed a bottle check and just immediately ran. I got 71 gold out of the encounter, which allowed me to buy 2 more marauders with spears to just start bulking out my henchmen. At the end of this game as well, we got given a lucky charm and a rabbit's foot each, which was just so everyone had access to them, I believe. They couldn't be given to anything but a 1-wound model. Luckily, Beiji, who wanted to be a real baller over the event, got both of them because he wasn't a 2-wound model. Next, I played Ian with his dwarves, his absolute stunties. And Ian in this scenario had the misfortune of being the defender on a breakthrough. And as I said about the dogs, they were movement 9. So his movement 3 dwarves didn't really stand a chance in this scenario. But we did get to play on a brilliant table. It was the river table, in which if you went into the river, your character would get either, if they were in armour, would get drowned possibly, or you would get swept down the river every turn. So Ian closed off one of the escape routes with a dwarf juve, and I attempted an 8-inch jump with my dog across the river, which obviously didn't go well. But by the end of the game, Ian bottled it because his dwarf lord was going to get ganked by my entire gang. He didn't spam missile weapons, which I thought was a classy move. And in that, not having to defend a wide area, it was his downfall. He was never going to do well in that scenario. Third, I played Harry's Kislev. I think this is actually a really stunning warband to look at visually. We played the surprise attack, like ambush style scenario, as we were forced to by Ken. And in this, the lower warband rating does the attacking and ambushing. And unluckily for Harry, my warband was 1 rating lower than his. So Harry got ambushed, and I think we let him bottle it turn 1 after taking the 25% casualties. So after that, we very quickly just managed to play a shootout style scenario. So actually we got to play 6 games that day, where our warbands would walk towards each other along a street, Necromunda style, waiting to go for their guns. And when they did, all hell would break loose. And his halfling threw a pie, turn 1, and kicked off the fight. So I think you can see a few pictures of that on Harry's Instagram. So check that out. They're all on the Mordheim City of the Damned Facebook page and the main Mordheim page as well. We are putting pictures up there. So then next was against Thomas, which is Surprise Encounter. And you can see this game. This is the one that I filmed on the channel potentially next Tuesday. If you are going to do that, skip forward about 30 seconds, because I'm going to spoil the outcome almost. Well, yeah, I spoil the outcome. So we each got 2 Weirdstone at the end of this. It was on this beautiful table. He had a very nice army. He actually got best army for it. It was a carnal carnival of desires, which I'm going to bestow it with that name. It was a Slaanesh Carnival of Chaos, which was really good using the Hedonite models. And finally, I played Sven, in which we were both on the same amount of wins for that day. So me and Sven played, and Bojack went on a tear. We played a Weirdstone hunt, and yeah, Bojack Norseman running everywhere. And I didn't fail any fear tests, really. I think I failed 2 fear tests, once with a leadership 5 dog, once with a spearman. And when we met, there just wasn't enough disruption caused by the fear for Sven to be able to handle the horde, because the horde had become, I think, 15 members at this point, 16 with a hired sword. So it really was getting scary. So then we went out on the night out. There was a few of us stayed out only till about 1:30 in the morning. But by that time, with the meads that we'd got from Ken, cheers Ken, in these great mugs, our heads were probably a bit sore. And me and Pete, that we know from the local area, he's been on and played Necromunda on the channel. Me and Pete played game 1 on day 2, because yeah, we wanted a bit of a relaxed game. So in that, Beiji kicked the head in of Jezebel von Karstein. It didn't look like it was going great at first. Jezebel took out Bojack, who'd stupidly ran forward in a desire to get straight to the combat. But yeah, Beiji arrived, kicked the head in of Jezebel, but then failed the break test, I think, on his second break test when we were both on break tests. Then that was all she wrote for that game. Pete got the win. There wasn't much to be said about that. The cowardliness was coming out of the Chaos Horde at this point. So then, game 7, I played Matt Lloyd because me and Pete had taken a while to finish. Matt and his old opponent had taken a while. So we were both going to end up playing the same opponents again, me playing Pete again. So we did an announcement and sorted it out ourselves, and I ended up playing Matt. So in this, I'll say Matt can no longer complain in our local campaign that Shadow Warriors are underpowered or anything close to balanced, because it took him 5 turns to hose down, or 5 or 6 turns to hose down 8 of my 16 Warband members. Beiji actually died in the game, but luckily I'd not used my rabbit's foot, which he was holding, so I could re-roll my 1 for the death, and I didn't have to call a taxi or get Emma to pick me up from the event while I screamed into a pillow. So game 8, I played Gonzo with his Possessed. Now, I'd been speaking to Gonzo early in day 1, and Gonzo wasn't having a great time of it, but he'd submarined the event and managed to get such a low Warband rating that his experience was really racking up, and he's some really scary Possessed models. So we played this on the Carnival table, and yeah, it was a really good table to play on. It was quite a good fit for our armies because we were both Chaos armies, so I really enjoyed playing that particular Warband on that table. We managed to engineer a fight in the main tent with the faster Kurgan Horde holding the tent because we got there first, while Gonzo tried to get in. I got really lucky with a fireball and took out his Possessed, but eventually the higher toughness and higher number of attacks, I think he had one with 4 or 5 attacks, managed to win out over my faster Kurgan Horde, and Gonzo got the victory. But not before I got away with a straggler and a total of 6 Weirdstone for the game. So that went quite well. Managed to hire back a Berserker which had died in the game. Died to a Mook's knife, actually. Not the most glorious of ends. But you win some, you lose some. Beiji didn't die in the game before because of his rabbit's foot, and I was happy about that. Game 9 was against James and his Marienburgers, and this sort of put into perspective my actual good luck over the past 2 days, because James, who had been actually got some really interesting models, like some Pirates of Sartosa style mercenary models that he had done into Marienburgers, and he was potentially having the worst luck out of anyone across the 2 days. And I was also around 110, 120 gang rating over him. So he had a real underdog bonus. Now, when we ranked up for the game, James put his warriors in a proper ranked formation, which fit quite well as I moved my horde spread out towards him and then tried to coalesce all at the same time in closing the noose, while his warriors of Marienburg formed a block and tried to hold out. It was a visually very good looking game, and I'm sorry, James, it can't do anything about that bad luck. He was so bad. He'd roll 6s, but it would be 6 to hit, 6 to wound, knock down on a 1, or 6 to hit, then no wound. So he'd get the 6s, just not in the right place a single time, and there was just nothing we could do about that. So luckily he had rolled his injury dice by the end of the game and not got, I think he lost 1 toughness on a hero, and every other casualty had been either out cold for a hero or just recovered for a henchman. So it wasn't quite the full kicking that I think we were both expecting by the end of the actual battle. But the post-game sequence didn't go that as badly as we were expecting for him. So then game 10, last game of the 2 days, I played Tom and his Shadow Warriors with his Ninja Ogre. And we were playing the takeover scenario, which is where you have 4 buildings designated across the board. You've got 8 turns and you've got to hold on to the buildings and not have enemy models in them. So our buildings were we were playing in a graveyard and were very close together. So it was a big scrap in which Tom never managed to roll over, I think, a 2 or a 3 for his injury rolls. So the only time he actually killed anything was when he stomped on 1 or 2 henchmen when they were down, which meant that his quick shot, trick shot Shadow Warriors were actually doing nothing with their shooting and hunting arrows because he would have needed a 4 to take me out. So luckily his Ninja Ogre kept him in it for a while, but the strength of Beiji taking out his leader, as well as Bojack, who had really got into a beast at this point. He was sprinting 18 inches, charging 18 inches a turn with strength 6. It really got into Tom and started tearing his warband apart. He took it like an absolute champion, as did everyone across the 2 days. I think I was the biggest baby when I played Matt out of anyone. So yeah, he took it like a champ. And that was the end of the 2 days. It was a really good event. I would happily play any of them again, except for you, Matt. Not you, though I'm going to be forced to in our Mordheim campaign at home. So, yeah, that was the event coverage. I'm going to play a game of sort of game 11 versus Phil, like outside the event, but with our event lists. So you can see the lists on the table at home, in case you don't like the event coverage because of the background noise. Yeah, so there is the event coverage of Tom's game, but being at the event, there is background noise in there. So try and stick it out if you want to see a good Mordheim map and a good Mordheim game, but there is background noise in there, be warned. And yeah, excellent event, excellent games, excellent people, and I would definitely recommend going to the next one that Ken holds sometime at the end of the year, but keep your eyes out on the Mordheim page. And if you like this coverage, I would like to do more of it. So like, comment if you did like the coverage and subscribe, and then I will know whether or not you like the coverage of the event. And if you really liked it, there is a Patreon link below for you to be able to buy me a coffee. I've already got 1 Patreon now. It was really good waking up to that in the morning. And so a big thank you to Taffy, who is now supporting the channel with a coffee every month. So cheers and see you next time.